Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is Tommy Blackburn with Mason and Associates, and today we want to talk about buying military time towards the FERS pension. Now, there's a couple options here. One could be we did a few years of military service and now we're doing federal, so we don't even have a military pension. Usually, almost always going to make sense to go ahead and buy that time towards your federal pension because you're getting no benefit for it right now. The easy or simple formula on that is you're going to pay 3% of what your base pay was for each of those years. So we have a common example here in the office of, say you had academy time and you were only earning $1,500 a year. Well, 3% of $1,500, that's going to be your cost to buy that academy time back. So it could be done very cost effectively. More complicated scenario is we have a military pension. Now, do we want to waive that pension and by that time have all 20 years or so apply to that FERS pension? That one we're seeing make less and less sense these days. One, just given that military retirements seem to get more tax favorable treatments in many states than a federal pension does. And in general, for that to make sense, what you really have to see is we had to leave the military at somewhat of a low rank. And now we'd have to be pretty high in the GS system to make that math work there. Hopefully this has been helpful, and it actually brings us on to a question that we received from one of our awesome podcast listeners who also is now listening to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate your question. And essentially the question says, I retired from the Navy, and because one, it qualified for the Bailey Act in North Carolina, and because North Carolina exempts military pensions, it's tax-free income to me in the state of North Carolina. I also then joined federal service in 2008, and now I'm trying to weigh, do I waive my military pension and buy that back for federal time? My assumption is that you've done the math, that there's enough of a differential there that it seems like, hey, maybe I would be better off doing that. But the crux of the question is, what happens to the state tax treatment? Because currently that military pension is not being taxed. How's it going to work now? Well, Bailey says that if we had 5 years of service before, I believe it's August 12th, 1989, we qualify for any federal pension there. If we were vested by that point in time, our pension will not be taxable in the state of North Carolina. So our answer here is our belief and our research. We use a tax software called CCH, that you will lose the tax advantage if you do this. So chances are you're going to be better off keeping that military pension separate and then having your FERS. And the reason is because 2008 is when you said you started service. So if we understand it correctly, when you give up this one that qualified for Bailey, you're not going to meet that 5 years of vested service under this new federal system that you would be rolling into. And while we couldn't find an exact case to answer this question, we can look to another common example of Bailey to see how we think this would work. And that one says, hey, if we have a Bailey qualified TSP, so say you had a military TSP, you can roll other money into that TSP and it gets that tax-free treatment. If you leave that TSP though, you move those funds elsewhere, you lose that tax-free treatment because the other plans were not vested. They did not meet that Bailey requirement of 1989. So that would lead us to believe if you then exited the military time, waived it, bought it under a system that was 2008, it's not going to meet the definition in North Carolina. I realize this was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful to everybody. Hope it was helpful to the awesome listener who sent in the question. If you like what you're hearing, please continue to send us questions. Stop by the channel, hit the bell, and we've got more coming. We hope you're enjoying it.